On this week's Money Minutes with Seb, we're doing my version of what you'd call a Q&A. Now, before we get into the questions and my answers, I want to remind everyone that I'm not a financial advisor and nothing on these videos is ever financial advice. It's really important that you talk to a professional who knows your specific situation. I am a CPA and a mortgage broker with more than 30 years of experience in finance and business. So when I give you my answers in this video, it's coming from that experience, but it's not a personalized recommendation for your unique situation. And if you're looking to work with me, just let me know. I'm happy to help. On this channel, you'll find videos where we've talked about different registered accounts here in Canada. RRSPs, TFSAs, RESPs, and a few of the less common ones. And a lot of real questions came in from Canadians trying to figure out where their money should actually go. So today I want to answer some of the specific ones that kept coming up. The most common question I get is about something called an RRSP meltdown. Now, if you've never heard that term before, don't worry, let me explain it. An RRSP meltdown is a strategy where you deliberately start withdrawing money from your RRSP in your 60s before the government forces you to. Remember, by the end of the year that you turn 71, your RRSP has to convert into a RRIF, and at that point you're required to take minimum withdrawals every year, whether you need the income or not. This meltdown strategy gets ahead of that. You take money out earlier in smaller controlled amounts, so you're not stuck with one massive taxable RIF balance later that pushes you into a higher tax bracket. So the question I get constantly is this: if you're doing a meltdown and your TFSA is already maxed out, where does that withdrawn money actually go? This is a fair question. My honest answer is go with a regular taxable, non-registered investment account. You lose the tax-free growth you'd get in a TFSA, but you're still ahead because you've already paid the withdrawal tax and you're avoiding a bigger hit down the road. Not as clean as a TFSA, but for high-income earners, I believe this is still the right move. The second question I get a lot is about how much money you actually need for retirement. You'll see this debated everywhere online. Some people say you need $1 million, some say 2, some throw around numbers like 3 million. And honestly, nobody needs a specific number pulled out of thin air. It really comes down to your lifestyle and what you actually plan on doing at 65, 71, 80. And this is exactly why it's so important to remember what I say on this channel, what other YouTube videos say, what you find online, even what you might ask ChatGPT. None of it knows your unique situation. Take it all with a grain of salt. The only person who actually knows what you're going to be able to do is a professional you're working with directly. Someone who can sit down with you and look at your actual life. So find someone you can start planning with now, so you're not caught in an awkward position at 65, 71, or even 80, scrambling because there was never a plan. That's why I keep saying in these videos, don't take my advice as your advice, unless we're actually working together on your individual situation. Take an RRSP, for example. This is something that comes up a lot, and it's worth walking through because it shows what happens when an RRSP just sits untouched for decades. Say a couple has 1.2 million combined in their RRSPs at age 55, and they don't touch it. With average returns, that can grow to roughly $3 million by the time they turn 71. And here's the thing. The government doesn't ask if you need that income. Once you hit 71, your RRSP converts to a RRIF, and minimum withdrawals become mandatory, whether you need the money or not. That's exactly why planning around this early matters so much, regardless of what number you land on for how much is enough. The third question I get a lot has to do with two accounts that don't get talked about enough: the LIRA and the LIF. Now, if those are new terms to you, let me explain. A LIRA, a locked-in retirement account, is usually what happens when you leave a job that had a pension. Instead of leaving that money in the pension plan, you transfer it into a LIRA. And the key word there is locked in. You can't access that money freely, and the rules for unlocking it vary depending on your province. When you hit a certain age, generally around 55, that LIRA converts into a LIF, a life income fund, and that's when you can actually start drawing income from it. But here's the catch. A LIF has both a minimum and a maximum withdrawal limit set by the government. So even if it makes complete tax sense to pull out more in a given year, you're capped. Now, this is something I've actually gotten into conversations about, not just with clients, but with friends too, because people land on completely different sides of this. Some people see that lock-in as a bug. It limits your flexibility, especially if you're trying to manage your tax bracket in retirement. But other people see it as a feature. It means that money can't be spent all at once or pulled out impulsively, so there's a kind of built-in protection there. And if your LIRA came from a pension with a strong employer match, it was probably the only way to get that match in the first place. My honest take is I lean toward wanting flexibility, especially for tax planning purposes. But if you value certainty over flexibility, I understand why you'd see it differently. Here's a big question. Can the government actually touch your TFSA? In one specific situation, yes. If the CRA decides you're trading inside it like a business, frequent buying and selling, short-term trades, they can reclassify that income as business income and tax it. That's rare, and it usually only applies to unusually high trading volume. But it's real. The TFSA is built for long-term buy and hold growth, not active trading. If you're someone who sent in a question and you're waiting to hear it answered, hang tight. I'm getting to as many as I can. And if you want to make sure you catch all of my videos when we post them, hit that notification bell now so you don't miss them. Another good question I get is if you're added to a home's title but didn't actually purchase it, does that affect your FHSA eligibility? It can. The FHSA is meant for first-time buyers, and being added to a title, even without contributing to the purchase, can affect whether the CRA still considers you a first-time buyer. If this applies to you, check with an advisor before opening or contributing. And finally, one that ties right back into what we talked about earlier. The question is $450,000 in an RRSP too much at 68? And like we already covered, there's no magic number that applies to everyone. My situation is different from yours, and your situation is different from your neighbor's. It depends on your other income sources as well, pension, CPP, OAS, and how you actually plan to draw that money down over time. The account size on its own doesn't tell you much. What matters is whether you've got an actual withdrawal plan in place before the government sets one for you. And that, again, comes back to sitting down with someone who can look at your full picture, not a number you saw in a comment section or a video. So the takeaway here is this. The rules around these accounts have a lot of nuance, and the right answer always depends on your specific situation. Knowing where to look for the exceptions, well, it can help you feel more prepared, more confident, and better positioned to make smart decisions. Hit that subscribe button and feel free to send it to someone it might help. And if you've got a question I didn't cover here, leave it below. That was your Money Minutes with Seb. Catch you next time.